And starting music. Hello everybody, this is Dean Robinson, SummitCityNoise.com, and it's time to do the radio show. Yes, it is. This is the Dean Robinson Radio Show on Indiana Talks and TuneIn. So let's get on with it, people. Let's get on with it. Now, I had to send a private Facebook message, to Gary Snyder, Indiana Talks today. Got to let this guy know that this is probably the last month for the Dean Robinson Radio Show. This is it, people. And with regard to Summit City Noise and all this social commentary, well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm done. I'm done. And so City of Fort Wayne, Wayne TV, WPTA, WFFT, you guys won. Whoa, whoa, Pat Miller, you won. You guys won. I concede. I'm done doing this because, I've been doing Summit City Noise as social commentary and news since 2008. So people, that's 10 years. And in that time, in 10 years, well, I haven't made a whole lot of new friends, no. And with a guy like me, I am very driven by what I decide to do. I've been, always the anti-authority type ever since I was a little kid, just kind of doing what I have to get along with people and society, But when I find with Summit City Noise, it's something that I have been driven to do, this news and social commentary, just doing my research and trying to bring some rational information, I guess, to people at large, and largely people in Fort Wayne. But after doing this for 10 years, and I realized, mostly the enemies I've made, and, again, not a lot of friends to be made from this stuff. And so with the enemies I've made in local media, well, I have all these skills in research, in journalism, English, video production, audio production, but in Fort Wayne, I can't work in this field. I can't work in news, can't work in journalism, because I've sort of painted myself into a corner in doing what I do. And so I find with Summit City Noise, maybe this mainstream media is threatened by what I say, because that's why they block me out. That's why the Fort Wayne CW says, well, Dean, you can't do a television show in Fort Wayne because Fort Wayne really doesn't want diversity of thought. They don't want diverse voices. It's purely homogenized news. And so with Summit City Noise, doing this since 2008, here it is 2018, 10 years later. Well, guys got to realize at some point, well, you might need to move on. And I think this is my time. And so I'm going to continue doing the Dean Robinson Radio Show at least through this month. Now, if something happens throughout this month that tells me I should keep doing it, I'll keep doing it. If I feel the way I do now at the end of March, people, it's game over for Summit City Noise, game over for the Dean Robinson Radio Show. You're not going to be seeing the Dean J television show on Access. None of this stuff. I'm just going to focus on my art. This stuff back here behind me. I have an Etsy page. So if people want to buy my stuff, you can go to Etsy. It's Summit City Noise on Etsy. One word, Summit City Noise on Etsy. If you want to buy my artwork, well, you can buy that stuff because that's what I'm going to focus on. Because I am a cartoonist and I do enjoy this cartooning. And even lately been doing a lot more drawing than I have done in years. I'm still good at it and it's something I enjoy doing. And it's probably going to be something that's, probably got a little bit more commercial appeal. Because when I'm doing this social commentary, well, I realize a lot of people don't want to hear it. And really most of my support, it's so funny, it comes from people that I don't even know. It comes from absolute strangers. When I go over my Summit City Noise page and I look at the likes that I get on my videos or whatever I'm posting, mostly from people I don't know. Mostly from people I don't know. And I get a lot of my Facebook friends sharing things all the time. And some of my personal friends that I know, not just Facebook friends, sharing stuff all the time. And I get a lot of stuff in my my inbox, I guess, for the messenger. So many of these pro-black videos that I'm getting, hey, you gotta watch this. And it's just somebody just talking about racism and race relations in America as if I don't already know this stuff. But those are the kind of posts that my Facebook friends and personal friends are sharing. And so I noticed these people sharing so much of this mainstream media stuff, but then when it comes to the items that I'm posting, the original stuff that I'm creating, it barely gets any traction. Now, I think it's worthwhile. I thought it's worthwhile for 10 years. But at some point, a person's got to look outside of what they think. And so that's what I've been doing. And it's like, okay, yeah, I like my stuff. And one of the points of Summit City Noise as news and social commentary was to parse through a lot of this information that we get in commercial media and then kind of pick and choose, from here's a little bit here, here's a little bit there. And then I find that sometimes I can put together a very coherent story, because you're not getting the whole story from these individual news sources. So I hope sometimes with some of these topics I can pull it together. I'm of the mind that I've been doing a pretty good job of it. But when I've got to go outside myself and look at the reaction, well, not that much traction, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm not mad. I'm not bitter. And so I just realized after a while, got to do an assessment, and this is the assessment I've come up with. And so some of it does come from recent events. It's going to be kind of things just kind of come to a head. And so it's going to be one of my Facebook friends, Chris Worth. And Chris Worth is a local musician. He just happens to be black, chocolatey like me. Now, I mentioned that he just happens to be black because he recently shared a story, whether from the Washington Post or the New York Times, talking about the Ku Klux Klan. And the headline had something to do with the KKK is slowly regaining power or slowly rising again. Okay? And so, well, people, I know about this Ku Klux Klan. I've studied it. And so I share a couple of videos that I produced specifically about the Klan. So one of them is The Man from Kokomo, about this guy, who lives in Kokomo, who claims to have combined the KKK and these Nazi skinhead groups in Kokomo. And that's a pretty big deal, because when you read like from the Washington Post or New York Times talking about the Klan, these mugs will tell you, even Associated Press will let you know, well, that's been one of the points of contention between the Klan and Nazis, is like, well, we're both racist, sure, but there are certain things that kept those groups apart. When you're a Nazi skinhead, you're a godless socialist, but you're white and you hate black people. But when you're in the KKK, well, you are a Christian. You're not godless anymore, and you love American values. So there's a divide there. The unifying principle is white supremacy. And so it's going to be Shane Michael Johnson, I think his name is. He's the guy in Kokomo who claims to have combined the Nazi skinheads and the Klan. And I get wind of this guy a couple years ago because when Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Socialist, is running for president, well, he comes to Fort Wayne, and that's where Shane from Kokomo, well, he comes to that rally, and then he gets in with some of these local hippies, and then one of these local tattoo artists who wants to be a politician, Donnie Manco, this guy wants to be a politician. He's doing tattoos. I guess he's attracted to this democratic socialism with Bernie Sanders, just like Shane. And so you got local media, a couple years ago talking about how, New Republic Tattoo is removing these hate tattoos from this guy. But he's a Klansman, but the Fort Wayne media just loved him. So I did a video about that. I shared that recently. I also shared another video about, the Republican Party and the KKK in Indiana. Because in the 1920s, a guy named D.C. Stevenson from Texas came to Indiana and basically became this political power player in which he would support these certain candidates, and the Klan would support certain candidates, to the point where in the mid-1920s, Indiana government was ruled by the KKK through the Republican Party. D.C. Stevenson. So I share this stuff, and with this thread that Chris Worth started, with a mainstream media report about the KKK regaining popularity, regaining power. Well, on that post and any other post you'll find about the KKK, there were certain discussions that always come up, okay? And one of the discussions has to do with, well, the Democrat Party, they're the ones who started the KKK. Anybody who wants to talk about the Republicans and the KKK, well, you're just crazy. You Democrats started it. And then there's going to be this discussion about Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama supporting Byrd, one of these old school Klansmen, when he died. Well, what about Hillary Clinton and Obama backing this Klansman? And then there's going to be a discussion about Louis Farrakhan, about why he, as the leader of the Nation of Islam, why he's just as terrible as the Klan. Even though I don't think the Nation of Islam has lynched white people for being white. But those are the discussions. Louis Farrakhan, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Democrats and Republicans, that's what people always want to talk about on Facebook when there's a story about the KKK being shared. Now, my take on it is, well, if we're talking about the Ku Klux Klan, why can't we talk about primarily white men who call themselves Christians promoting white supremacy? Why can't we talk about white male Christians promoting white supremacy when we're talking about the KKK? But when I'm posting those kind of statements, I keep getting these people posting back, and they're white people coming back with this Obama, Hillary, Democrat, Republican Party stuff. Nobody wants to talk about white male Christians practicing white supremacy. And so when I'm kind of, going back and forth with some of these people on Facebook about this stuff, it's like, why bother? Why am I here having this discussion again about the Ku Klux Klan, which I've had this discussion countless times? Why is it that white men always want to talk about the Democratic Party starting the KKK? Because it's like, well, we can't talk about white men promoting white supremacy. We've got to talk about everything else but. And so when a guy like me just having that conversation again, well, that's when I got to realize, well, Dean, maybe you need to pull yourself out of these discussions. And so maybe if I think that I'm bringing these words of wisdom from up on high, well, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just casting pearls at swine. Maybe I'm just wasting my time. And so that's one of those threads that just made me understand, wow, I've already been down this road so many times. I know they're going to talk about Democrats and Republicans. They're not going to talk about white men practicing Christianity and white supremacy. And then what I find so often when talking about race in America and just talking about America now, you have so many of these people that want to talk about the U.S. forefathers, people like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, and how what they established then created this framework for what we have now. I don't agree with that. I believe whatever we have now, in which black people are not kidnapped, slaved. We're not kidnapped slaves anymore. Native Americans, whatever of you natives got to survive the genocide laid down, well, you can still live. Women who didn't have the right to vote, white women didn't have the right to vote until 1920, well, now you mugs can vote. And so I realized whatever George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were laying down as Christians, because we hear so much about this Christianity of these U.S. forefathers and how great their Christianity was for everybody now. But I would say what we have now is in spite of what George Washington and Thomas Jefferson wanted. These Christians owning kidnapped Africans as slaves, not giving them rights. If you learned how to read, you could get killed for that as a black person. In their Constitution, they come up with a 3/5 compromise to tell you, well, black people, you can't vote. You're not fully human, but you're 3/5 of a person, because these mugs in the South, in these southern states, well, they want that population to count for something. But you can't count for 5/5 of a human being. Black man, black woman, you're 3/5 of a human being. That's a 3/5 compromise in your original Constitution. And so that's what they were trying to establish. White supremacy, white male domination with all this Christianity. And so I realized plainly, today's Ku Klux Klan is merely promoting the white supremacist Christianity that was being practiced by guys like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, about 100 years before there was a Ku Klux Klan. So to lay down this Christianity with all this white male domination, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson did not need the Ku Klux Klan for that. The Ku Klux Klan is only dreaming that they could go back to that. Now, when I share that on this thread that Chris Worth just shared on Facebook, nobody's trying to hear it. Can't get any responses back from that. Just going to have somebody saying, well, the KKK is certainly not Christian. Those guys are just as Christian as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and those slave-owning hypocrites practicing genocide and severe sexism on white women and all women. Those guys are just as Christian as the KKK now. So if anybody on Whoa AM or any conservative capitalist Christian wants to talk about how great George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were because of their Christianity, well, if that's the brand of Christianity that you're promoting, I want no part of it. And when it comes to this Christianity stuff, well, yeah, I was raised Catholic, baptized and confirmed, and so I talk about, well, I'm not a Catholic, not a Christian now. Well, maybe I don't get to say that. Maybe since I've been baptized and confirmed, and I had my first confession, and I've had my first communion, well, maybe it's, well, now, Dean, you're just in. You got the holy water put on you, you're Catholic, whether you like it or not. And so maybe I do just have to roll with that. Maybe I just have to call myself a Christian too. But when I find the brand of Christianity that's usually displayed out here, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I mean, I'm glad that you don't call it Jesus-ism, because it's so unlike Jesus, it's madcap. But that's what we get out here. And for me, I understand, well, I'm not going to fit into these groups. I squarely do not fit into this Christian group. I love Jesus. I talk about Jesus all the time. I find that a lot of people haven't read this Bible. They'll tell me, yeah, I read the Bible, but you don't know what's in it. I'll look at this stuff and I realize, hey, here's some stuff I may have missed over. I may have skipped. But I check it out and I find that what I relate to with the Lord, what I relate to with Jesus, and with women in the Bible who basically are just given a raw deal, especially with this Christianity. So I realize I can't buy into all of it. So I don't know if I can be a pure Christian, pure Catholic. And so in Catholicism, you have this Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, for the Holy Spirit. So you have a father figure who's a man, you have a son figure who's a man, and then the third position, a ghost. So if you're at the Olympics and you're handing out medals, well, the Lord, Father, you get the number one, you get the gold. And then in the number 2 position, there's Jesus, you get the silver medal. But then in the third position for bronze, it's an empty space. You would just have to lay the medal on the platform because there's nobody there. It's a ghost, it's a spirit. No room in Christianity, no room for this feminine power. There's just no room for it. 2 men and a ghost. It's like 2.5 men, but it's 2 men and a ghost. And so I understand that when you use Christianity in the United States as the bedrock of your politics, this Republican Party, using Christianity as the bedrock of their politics, well, I realized, it's going to be a very hateful, exclusive sort of Republican Party club that you're building here. Now, people can't understand, sometimes white guys now can't understand, well, why do black people go to the Democratic Party? Why do black people go there? These Democrats just using black people, just using them. Well, why aren't black people just naturally drawn to the Republican Party? Why is the Republican Party now toxic to so many black people? Well, these Republicans nowadays, they don't have an answer for that. They don't. But you got to realize, like back in Jackie Robinson's day, the great baseball player who had to cross the color line, well, he was a Republican. He was a Republican until Barry Goldwater in the 60s. And then he saw, well, wow, these Republicans this Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, that used to be the natural political party for black people, well, by the 1960s, these mugs changing because the Democratic Party changing. They change. And so in the 60s, you have Barry Goldwater, openly racist, openly hostile to black people. Jackie Robinson talking about one of these conventions, Republican Party conventions, talking about how these white guys just dog black people. They'd spit on them, try to light them on fire. They would just do anything to brutalize black people, black voters, because Barry Goldwater realized times are changing. This Democrat Party from the South that's notoriously racist, they're changing. They're changing. So when you get a candidate like JFK, you're seeing the change. And in the 60s, the civil rights movement really taking root. In the 50s, things are changing. Times are changing. And so Barry Goldwater realizes, well, if times are changing and we want this Republican Party to grow, well, maybe we have to go fishing where the fish are. Maybe we have to go hunting for ducks where the ducks are, which meant the Republican Party had to change to appeal to white racists. And so that's why nowadays Republican Party operatives, they can't figure out why the Republican Party is toxic to black people. They just can't figure it out. But it's not that hard to figure out. These parties change. They change. And so when I talk about the change of the Republican Party in the 60s, well, you can also look to Indiana in the 1920s. When I talk about D.C. Stevenson, the Texan, who comes to Indiana, and we have this resurgence of the Klan in the 20th century, because the Klan had died out at the end of the 19th century, the 1800s, when these mugs founded, all this post-Civil War stuff, these mugs in the South terrorizing black people with this Ku Klux Klan. But that's when people now want to talk about, well, it's the Democrat Party who started that. Why can't we talk about white men practicing white supremacy? Why can't we talk about white men being brutal? But now people just want to talk about these political parties, so we don't talk about white male domination in the United States. And then when these guys combine it with Christianity, it's a toxic mix that's strangling people, sucking the air out of all of our environments. But here's this Christianity aligned with this Republican Party stuff, but it's so mean-spirited, so exclusive, so hateful. But these Democrats know better. Know better. And so I wouldn't even try to pit one as being worse than the other. They're all terrible. President Barack Obama was a war president, just like President Trump, just like George W. Bush. There's no difference. And so I understand that. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting tired of bringing this stuff back up. Getting tired of it. I'm going to stop doing it. I'm going to focus on my art. And so, as I told Gary Snyder, and I told a couple of insiders, who like my stuff, who support my stuff, people, I'm coming towards the end of it. I don't see the point. I'm not affecting any change, usually making people angry, alienating people I know. For what? For what? There's not a lot of money in it. There's no money in it. And with this internet, the way it's changed, with Facebook and Google sucking up all the advertising, people, it's hard to get advertisers for a website anymore. It used to be easy. I used to be able to do it. But times have changed. I've kind of stuck with what I've been doing. I haven't changed. But now I am going to change, people. I'm going to stop doing this stuff. So this March, we're on the warning track, like in baseball, when you want to catch that ball before it goes to be a home run, but you feel the track underneath you. That's where we are now. And so I got to take a break. I'm Dean Robinson, SummitCityNoise.com.